All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the League Express podcast. My name's Jake Kearnan, and joining me as always is the editor of League Express, Martyn Sadler, joining us after what was a wonderful grand final. Martyn, I believe you were there in attendance, mate.
Yes, for a change, I wasn't in the press box this week, Jake. I was at I hired an executive box at the Hull KR end of the ground in the east stand, and we were sitting there with a balcony overlooking, the many of the Hull KR supporters, and my goodness me, they were loud. From about half an hour before the game started, they'd all piled in, and they were determined to make lots of noise and make a mark on Old Trafford. Believe me, it was amazing. They were so loud. There was a band playing before the game, a band called the Pigeon Detectives, who I've no doubt are probably a pretty good band to listen to, but I'm afraid I didn't manage to hear anything of them because of the Hull KR fans chanting. And when the young lady came on to sing Jerusalem, I'm afraid that didn't register either. At the east stand end of the field, it was so noisy. And I assume the Wigan fans were pretty noisy at the other end, but I obviously didn't hear them because all we heard was the Hull KR fans. But it was great in a way to share their joy at the way the game unfolded, and it was very exciting. I mean, we always say, don't we, that English games, the English game is atmospheric, and certainly that one was, Jake. You'd have loved being there. It's a shame you weren't. I'd have gladly welcomed you into our executive box if you had been, but sadly you were on the other side of the world.
Oh, mate, I would have loved to. I could definitely feel the atmosphere coming through the speakers. It seemed like it was quite a loud and vocal crowd. Just touch on the crowd, 68,000 in attendance, mate. Did it feel like there was more than 68,000 there?
Well, you couldn't. I think the ground holds about 75,000, and it wasn't really that obvious where the 7,000 extra fans might have squeezed into. But I think that was a pretty respectable crowd. I think both clubs sold about 12,000 tickets or thereabouts during the week leading up to the game. And obviously there were lots of neutral people there. I think most neutrals, to be honest, were probably, hoping for a Hull KR win because obviously, they became only the fifth ever winners of the grand final, and obviously the Wigan fans would have been hoping for a Wigan victory, clearly. But most neutral Rugby League fans probably wanted a new name on the trophy, I think. So I think that's probably why Hull KR's win went down pretty well with everybody except Wigan supporters and, Wigan officials and so on. So, no, it certainly... I think 68,000 was pretty respectable. But the really interesting thing is that the TV audience was significantly higher than it was for the same game last year. I think the average audience on Sky of 455,000 was something like 22% up on the figure for the game last year. So that's a really promising result. And, there has been a rise in attendances at Super League this year and in TV viewing figures, it seems, although those figures are not always made public. But it looks to be going in the right direction, broadly speaking, and that's really encouraging, particularly when the negotiations for a new TV contract will be underway, if they're not underway already. So, I think there's a lot of encouragement to take out of that game, and it was certainly a game that lived up to expectations, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Let's talk about the game. 24 points to 6. Obviously, the Hull KR got the win. Did this shock you, mate, how well they came out the gate? And I just think, watching their line speed and defence, they were just ferocious with how many numbers they were getting into tackles.
But they started nervously. The curious thing was that Wigan should have been 12-0 up in no time at all, really, because they actually blew a couple of opportunities. Liam Farrell dropped a ball with the try line open. It wasn't that easy a pass to take, but you would have expected him to take it on most occasions. And then we had Bevan French just losing touching the ball down, but just losing it when challenged by Mikey Lewis. It was a bit like the NRL Grand Final when Kamika, I think, dropped the ball when challenged by Reece Walsh. Not entirely dissimilar, not quite similar, but not entirely dissimilar. And it tends to show that you never give up hope of stopping a try being scored, and Michael Lewis didn't, and he got the reward for that. And the curious thing about that, Jake, was that Bevan French, I don't know whether it affected his confidence for the rest of the game, but he didn't. I mean, he's a brilliant player, as we all know, and last year it was his brilliant try that won the game for Wigan against Hull KR. But this year he was relatively quiet, really, compared to a normal Bevan French performance. He only needed one try for his 150th career try. And when he blew that opportunity, there never seemed to be any sign that he was going to score that try, really, to be honest. But the crucial moment was the yellow card for Brad O'Neill, the Wigan hooker, who upended his opponent, and it was a dangerous tackle, and he got 10 minutes in the sin bin, and that gave Hull KR the opportunity to score 2 tries while he was off the field, and they never looked back, really. And it was funny because for the first 20 minutes, Hull KR had looked quite nervous. They'd dropped the ball quite a bit. They'd made errors trying to play the ball and giving the ball over to Wigan, therefore, and it didn't look all that promising for them, really, early in the game. But they were let off the hook by those Wigan mistakes when they didn't score tries that I've referred to already. So when O'Neill was off the pitch, they just took advantage. Mikey Lewis scored the first try, a brilliant piece of individual skill, stepping inside I think it was Liam Farrell who he stepped inside, and then Joe Burgess got in for the second try on the left, brilliantly taken try again, and suddenly they were 10-0 up, and things were going their way. And although Brad O'Neill obviously came back onto the pitch, Wigan couldn't then make an impression for the rest of the half until they got a penalty right on half-time that was converted by Harry Smith to make it 10-2 at half-time. So it was an interesting game, and we'd all seen the previous week's NRL Grand Final when Brisbane had been 10 points behind Melbourne at half-time and came back to win it. So I don't think anybody from Hull KR thought that they were necessarily going to win, even though they were winning at half-time by that margin. And sure enough, in the second half, we got a brilliant break from Jay Field down the left wing, and the ball came inside for Harry Smith to score a terrific try for Wigan. And it was suddenly, Wigan were back in it. It was suddenly 12 points to 6. And everybody thought, gosh, here comes the Wigan revival. But it never materialised, Jake, as you obviously saw. So Hull KR scored their third try in about the 60th minute. And again, it was a brilliantly created try. Jez Litton was the man who touched it down. He started the move from dummy half, but it involved James Batchelor and Peter Hiku. Hiku giving the final inside pass to Litton to score. That made it 18-6 with the conversion. And Wigan never really threatened again. Wigan just sort of faded out of the game from that point, which was uncharacteristic, really. I think, that was not vintage Wigan, put it this way. And then, of course, Hull KR scored another try just near the end when Joe Burgess intercepted a pass to make it 24-6. But amazing, 5 tries, 5 very good tries as well. Every try was worth watching. And it made a nice contrast from the last 2 years when there's only been 1 try in each of the last 2 grand finals. So I was delighted about that, mate. And I thought, it was a fantastic occasion, and it was great. It was great to be at the Hull KR end of the field as the players came towards the fans after the game to acknowledge them, of course. And the fans gave a particular strong reception, as you would expect, to Mikey Lewis, chanting his name an awful lot. But they also gave a great send-off to Gerard Waerea-Hargreaves, whose participation in the game the previous week had been in severe doubt, hadn't it? He'd been suspended for 3 games. The club appealed against the suspension successfully, and he was able to play. And I thought Waerea-Hargreaves, for me, was a contender for player of the match because I thought he gave his best performance in a Hull KR shirt that I've seen. I've not seen every single game that he's played, but I thought he was absolutely outstanding. He played like the great player we know that he is, and did an awful lot to help secure the middle of the field for Hull KR and create the space for those great tries. So it was a terrific performance by him, and the crowd fully acknowledged it. And he can. I think he said he's going to hang around in England or in Europe until nearly Christmas and then go home. But he will certainly go home as a player who the fans remember at Hull KR.
Yeah, no, absolutely, mate. He certainly left it all out in the field, and what better way to end your career than to know that you've given it your all in the final game at Old Trafford there. But yeah,
and to become one of those players who wins a grand final in both major competitions.
Yeah.
A fairly limited list, isn't it? But he's joined that list now, and that's marvellous to see. And it's a memory that you will never take away from him. It must be a wonderfully satisfying feeling to be JWH this week, I would think.
Oh, yeah. It's the cherry on top of a great rugby league resume. But yeah, I see he's... They tried to hand him a bit of a suspension for a few offences in that match, I think I read, but doesn't matter now.
2-match suspension, yeah.
Well, if he ever decides to come out of retirement, maybe he'll have to serve those, but a fitting way for him to be sent off.
I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Sometimes players do come out of retirement, but to be honest, what he's achieved this year, he couldn't top it, could he? In any way, shape, or form. He actually came originally on a 2-year contract. Of course, he would have been here next year, but I think he realised as the season went on that this was destined to be his last season. He's 36. It was probably time to call it a day. At that age, you can't play forever, of course, particularly the way that he plays the game, which is incredibly demanding on his body, of course. So I think he deserves to go out on a high, and it's been terrific to have him in Super League, albeit only for 1 season.
Yeah, definitely.
And the other guy we ought to mention, by the way, is Michael McIlorum, who is also retired now. Played probably about no more than 20 minutes. I didn't time his time on the pitch, but he started the game before making way for Jez Litton and played with a broken ankle, believe it or not. His ankle hasn't fully recovered, but you wouldn't have thought so from his performance in those first 20 minutes or so. And again, he won't be with the club next year. He's actually going to be on the coaching staff at the Catalans Dragons. And again, what a great player he's been over so many years. Obviously spent so much time at Wigan, then went and had several years at the Catalans Dragons and 1 year at Hull KR. But again, what's really interesting, Jake, about Hull KR, I mean, the real crucial appointment there was the coach Willie Peters in 2023. He's now completed 3 seasons at Hull KR, and every decision that Willie makes seems to work out well. You know, a lot of people might have raised eyebrows when he was recruiting two very mature players like Waerea-Hargreaves and McIlorum at the start of the season. A few people might have said, what the heck? You know, can those players still contribute at that age? Well, you know, he's been shown to be absolutely correct in his judgment. You know, a lot of people wondered when they recruited Arthur Morg from Catalan's Dragons partway through the season. Some people sort of raised eyebrows and said, will he really strengthen the side? Well, again, we've had the answer, haven't we? Arthur Morg has had a great season with Hull KR and is now a grand final winner with the club. And you know, all that recruitment that they've made, I can't think of a single player who's not worked out well for them. You know, Willie Peters' judgment must be, you know, among the best of any coach, I would think, because it's been outstanding.
Yeah. And mate, I thought Arthur Moore was outstanding on the weekend. His positional play at fullback there. I think like Wigan kept
Absolutely.
trying to find the grasp with their kicks and he was just consistently in the right place, catching the ball on the full every single kick it felt like.
That's right. There was only one occasion very early in the game when he tried to bring the ball out of defence and lost it, and that was just shortly before the Bevan French no try. So that was the only real error that he made, as far as I'm aware. But apart from that, as you say, I had a terrific match, and you know, looked a real star as far as All KR are concerned. And I always love to see French players playing well because I'd obviously love to see the French national team doing well. So no, it was a great performance by him and by all his teammates. There wasn't really much weakness at all that I could identify.
Yeah, that's right, mate. And when you look at the Wigan side of things, you touched on it there before. It was a very uncharacteristic game from them, but I also feel like it was the way Hull KR defended that contributed to the way, I guess, it all panned out for Wigan. They were just suffocating in defence, weren't they? And I think Willie Peters has almost rolled out the blueprint for other teams on how you beat this gun Wigan side.
Yeah, and they certainly suffocated their key players, didn't they? They suffocated French and they suffocated Field, and that certainly. I mean, to be able to do it for 80 minutes, the real secret is doing it for 80 minutes. It's not that you can do it occasionally. You know, any team can defend well for part of the game, but to do it for the whole game in the way that they did it was absolutely outstanding. And again, going back to Willie Peters, it was quite interesting before the game. You know, he made some adjustments compared to what they did when they lost last year. Last year, they travelled over to Old Trafford on the day of the game, apparently, and turned up at the stadium and you know were maybe a little bit overawed by it, as you probably would be at Old Trafford when you know go there for the first time. It's a massive stadium. It's certainly quite awe-inspiring. This year, he took his team across the day before, and they actually visited the stadium on the Friday, I believe, and had a walk around it to sort of acclimatise themselves. And you know, that's just one little sort of thing. Whether that had any real bearing on the outcome of the game, it's very difficult to say for sure, but it may well have done. And you know, again, and Willie Peters isn't afraid to make key decisions. I mean, selecting Michael McIlorum with his ankle still not fully healed. Many people might have thought that was a gamble, particularly when he was only likely to play for such a limited number of minutes. But nonetheless, he picked him. Broadbent was put on to made the 18th man in the game day squad, which many people felt, you know, he was a bit unlucky to miss out. And of course, that's true. He was unlucky to miss out. But Willie Peters went with his, you know, with his selection. And again, as I say, it couldn't have worked out any better, and it was amazing in every respect.
Mm. No, definitely, mate. Now, obviously, we had John Keir on last week, mate, and he must have had a crystal ball in his house the way he predicted this game would pan out, mate. He said Mikey Lewis is going to own this match, and he was quite confident that Hull KR could get the job done, and obviously, that's what's happened. Mikey Lewis, Rob Burrow Award winner. What are your thoughts on John's prediction now that it's all panned out, mate?
Well, that's why we had John on, because he's a bigger expert than either of us. He knows more about the game than we do. Really, at the end of the day, he's certainly a better judge than we are. I thought Wigan would win, so that shows how much I know, and I suspect you probably would have thought the same thing. No, John's knowledge and insight is terrific, and Mikey Lewis did rise to the occasion brilliantly. Mikey Lewis is a real superstar of our game. There's no doubt about it. He chose the biggest stage on which to play the biggest game, and that was so impressive, Jake, and it really was. I would say one thing as well about the venue. Old Trafford is such an iconic venue, and obviously mainly for football, but I think of it as a rugby league ground because I never go to it to watch a football game, but only to watch rugby league games. And it's quite remarkable. I mean, we, as I say, I was in the hospitality box at the East Stand end, and I have to say that the way the staff handled all the hospitality people was absolutely outstanding. From entering the stadium, the staff there were first class. They gave us everything we needed. They couldn't have been better. And just looking around the stadium, it's astonishing, really, when you look at its facilities, which we can only dream about in rugby league, to be perfectly honest, in this country. It's astonishing to think that there's talk about Old Trafford being demolished and rebuilt as a new 100,000 stadium, because the way it is at the moment, it's just absolutely terrific, and it would be it would be incredible to see it being knocked down. But if that's progress, and if that's what's going to happen, then that's what's going to happen, and it will be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's almost like, hey, if they don't want it, we'll happily take it in rugby league. They can build another stadium somewhere. Yeah. We'll happily play there week in and week out. But yeah, mate, just on, I guess it's exciting times for Hull KR, but for Wigan, do you think, this loss will hurt them going forward? Are you expecting them to sort of bounce back next year?
Oh, yeah, of course they will. I mean, you can't win every game, can you? And they'll learn from this defeat. Willie Peters is a very smart coach. Obviously, he'll learn from this defeat. Basically, what they'll learn is not to make mistakes, because if they'd not made those mistakes, they may well have won the game. And, games turn on error. There were three key errors that they made. The two missed tries early on, and the Brad O'Neill tackle on Tyrone May that got him yellow carded. Without those, without those three things happening, Wigan would have been 12-0 up, and if O'Neill hadn't been sin-binned, it would have been really difficult for Hull KR. But that's not how it worked out. And but next year, who knows? Who knows what might happen? It might be Hull KR coming back, and it might be them making the mistakes. The great beauty of sport is its incredible uncertainty, isn't it? And none of us know who's going to be the top club next year. Obviously, Hull KR and Wigan will both be major contenders, but there will be others as well. And we wait to see who will make it next year. I'll tell you what will be a great game at Old Trafford, though, and that is a grand final between the two Hull clubs. If it had been Hull versus Hull KR, I think it would have undoubtedly sold out the stadium. And I think you'd need to take a hearing test after that game because you'd probably be deafened by the two sets of fans. So we had that 1980 Challenge Cup final at Wembley when OKR beat Hull 10-5, and it would be incredible to think of having a game, a grand final between those two Hull clubs, which are so terrific, and I look forward to that one day. Who knows?
Now, just on like Mikey Lewis's performance, he's only 24 years old. They always say a playmaker's prime starts around the age of 27, but geez, I tell you what, he's been impressive this year, hasn't he? Like how far he's come from the grand final last year, just in his improvement. Yeah, his ceiling's pretty high, I think, for Mikey Lewis.
I'm hoping that we get the chance to see Mikey Lewis against Reece Walsh at Wembley on the 25th of this month. I've booked my ticket down there for that game, Jake, and I'm looking forward. I hope that Sean Wayne. I mean, Sean Wayne. We'll talk about the England squad that Sean Wayne has announced in a moment or two, but it's going to be an incredible game down there, and I hope that Mikey Lewis is in it because I think we need the sort of skill and spirit and commitment that he showed for Hull KR on Saturday, and we'll need that against a great Australian squad. So it's something to really look forward to, I've got to say.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Well, why don't we get into the England squad that's been announced? At first glance, mate, what jumped out to you when you first saw the squad?
Well, you always it's a funny thing about a squad, isn't it? You very often look for those players who are not in it first of all, and obviously everybody's talked about Jake Connor, the man of steel, not being in it, and apparently not really being anywhere near to being in. And Sean Wayne gave an interview on BBC television um, in which he said, that he was totally unconcerned that Jake Connor won the Man of Steel award because he didn't really know how that decision was made, and he didn't care about the players who were in the dream team and so on because only his opinion mattered, so to speak, which of course is true. Sean has puts his own reputation on the line with the players he picks, and if we win the Test series against your guys, Jake, this year, then Sean will be a genius, and if we lose, then he'll obviously not be a genius. The genius will be Kevin Walters. So selections, we debate selections all the time, don't we? And I mean, I would certainly have had Jake Connor in because I love the uncertainty that he can create for the opposition, and I would have had him in if I'd been the selector. But of course, I'm not, and he's not in. There are one or two other players who are. I mean, it's a pretty. It's not a young squad that Sean has picked. Is I don't think there's a player under the age of 24. I mean, he's selected Alex Walmsley, for example, of St Helens, who's at the age of 35. He's also selected Callum Watkins, who's with Leeds Rhinos these days, who's another player who you might have thought his international career had come to an end by now. So those are really quite brave selections because many people would have thought that that those guys were now beyond their best really, but Sean's gone with them. He's also picked John Bateman, who's now with the North Queensland Cowboys. I'm not sure what sort of season John has had, but I don't think he's broken too many pots at North Queensland this year. But Sean rates him because I think he understands John Bateman is an incredible competitor and the sort of guy who rises to the occasion in big games. And I think that's probably what he's relying on, really. If John makes the squad, I mean, he's a terrific player, potentially, and it would be marvellous to see him playing at his best when the Test series begins. So, very, 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 very interesting selections, I think. And the other guy who I think has been very unlucky not to make the squad is the Warrington hooker Danny Walker, who again I think I would have selected, but Sean's gone with Darrell Clarke of St Helens, who's long established hooker for England, and he's also gone with Jez Litton. I suspect that the Wembley for Wembley he'll start the game with Darrell, and he'll have Jez Litton on the bench. I'd be very surprised if that weren't what we saw unfolding at Wembley.
Would you have gone Danny and Jez, or would you have gone Danny and Darrell if it was you making that call?
I think Jez Litton has to be in. Jez Litton is outstanding. I think I would have gone with Danny and Jez probably. But that's not to say that Darrell Clarke isn't still a very good player. And I think it was a marginal decision between Danny and Darrell. I would have gone for Danny. Sean has obviously gone for Darrell. I don't think that weakens the squad in any significant way. It's just that my preference would have gone in favour of Danny, I think. And it's interesting that George Williams is the only Warrington player who's in the squad, which is quite interesting, isn't it?
The other notable, I guess, names missing. No Junior Nsemba.
No.
And I guess of the other Australian or NRL players that put their hands up, he's picked AJ Brimson, but didn't decide to go with Billy Smith, who also put his hand up.
Yeah.
But we always said that was going to be a tough ask because England has a lot of great centres in form at the moment. But yeah, AJ Brimson gets the nod.
Yeah, I'm surprised about Nsemba, although he's not had the greatest season for Wigan, and I think a lot of Wigan fans have been a little disappointed at his performances this season. I mean, he was brilliant over the last couple of years, but doesn't quite seem to have kicked on in the way that perhaps they might have hoped. And he's probably just paying the price now for. And you might have hoped that he would have had a really strong game in the grand final as well, just to sort of nudge Sean into selecting him ahead of somebody like Mikołaj Oledzki of Leeds Rhinos, who's got the nod as a prop forward. And again, I've not seen every Leeds game this year, so I can't necessarily comment with total authority about Mikołaj Oledzki's performances this year. But he's a very good player. I'm not quite sure that he was quite England class for most of the season, but hopefully we'll see as the Test series starts. And the other guy who I think might be a bit unlucky is Elliot Minchella, of the captain of Hull KR, who led his team to a terrific victory on Saturday, but hasn't made the cut at the end of the day. So we'll see how that goes. And but if we look at the guys who are in there, as I say, we've got an incredibly experienced squad of players, and I hope that I obviously hope that experience pays dividends with a win at Wembley on October the 25th.
Yeah, and probably all these selections probably don't come as a surprise to people because people know what Shaun Wane's method is. If you've done the job for him before, he's more likely to pick you based on past performance.
Well, he's a great believer in trust, isn't he? He's a great believer in selecting players who he can trust to deliver the sort of performance that he wants to see. So let's hope that his judgment is as good as what Willie Peters is. We were talking about earlier. What great judgment Willie Peters has got. I hope that Sean's in exactly the same situation and that his judgment will prove to be correct.
Mm-hmm. Now, mate, there was a little bit of I think some of the people in the media over there have labelled it as moaning from the Australian camp about the times that they're set to fly and land in the UK. Did you see those comments from Kevin Walters, who wasn't too pleased with the flights that the RFL booked landing at night time in England?
No, I've not seen those comments. No, no, no.
Uh,
So what time are they due to arrive? Hopefully at 2 o'clock in the
oh,
morning.
no, I think to be fair, I think they still land at like 8:30 or 9 p.m. I didn't see
Yeah,
an issue with it. I mean, they're being flown over in first class, so can't complain too
yeah.
much, right?
Yeah, yeah. And of course, if they arrive at 8:30 in the evening our time, that will be 11:30 in the morning Australian time, won't it? So it'll feel like late morning as far as they're concerned,
Yeah,
given that, and they'll obviously need to make an adjustment pretty quickly to avoid jet lag for English time. So they're arriving on Thursday night, I think, aren't they?
I believe
If I
so.
understand it properly. Yeah,
Mm,
and they'll be staying in London, obviously.
yeah, that's right. And that'll be fine. Get a few good sleeps under their belt, and they'll be rearing and ready to go. But it's interesting looking at the England squad, comparing it to the Australian squad, and seeing how many halves Kevin Walters has picked, as opposed to England, who have the three notable halves there in Smith, Williams, and Lewis. Obviously, Wellesby and AJ can play in the halves as
Yes.
well, but I think Kevy's gone and picked five specialist halves almost for the Australian side, and I just wonder whether that'll come back to bite him.
Well, the thing about halfbacks is that they occupy such crucial positions, and because they handle the ball such a lot, they're always in danger of picking up injuries. So to have adequate reinforcements for that purpose is probably not a bad thing. And I mean, he's picked one or two real potential bolters, hasn't he? Ethan Strange, who's been absolutely outstanding for Canberra this year. I think he's a absolutely terrific player. Whether I don't think he'll get selected, obviously, ahead of Nathan Cleary and Cameron Munster, but who knows? And Tom Dearden was absolutely outstanding for Queensland this year. Plays for North Queensland, which of course didn't make the playoffs this year, but again couldn't be better. And then of course Mitchell Moses as backup. My goodness, he'd get into any other international team, wouldn't he? So the thing about the Australian squad is it's just full of great players, and I'm glad that only 17 of them can actually get in the matchday squad, mate. So, it'll be 17 against 17. If you look at the squad as a whole, 24 players against 24, I think you've got to say that the Australian squad looks significantly stronger. But when you narrow it down to whoever the best 17 is, it becomes a bit more equal. So let's hope that we can give you a shock on the day.
Yeah, mate, I can't wait. And hopefully after that, performance at Old Trafford on the weekend, that'll convince a few more people over the coming weeks to book that ticket down for Wembley because, it's set to be a cracker, mate.
Well, I hope so. I mean, I think they've got to about 50,000 sales now. It's a 90,000 stadium, so there's still a lot of tickets to sell. And I certainly hope that they're able to, get beyond 60,000 and up to 70 or thereabouts. It would be a shame if they didn't, because it's going to be a fantastic occasion. And there's an American football game the week before, by the way, that's I think has already sold out the at Wembley for 90,000 or so. And it would be a shame if they can sell those tickets so easily for a game that's so much less appealing, in my opinion, than a Rugby League Ashes test. But that's the way it goes, isn't it? And who knows what the final crowd will be? But let's hope it edges up.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, mate. All right, Martin. Well, anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up things today, mate?
Well, we ought to touch upon the World Club Challenge because that's
Oh, yep.
That's as it always is. It's problematic, isn't it? Hull KR are going to play in Las Vegas at the end of February next year. February the 28th, I think the date is. Brisbane aren't going to Las Vegas, but they are not keen to come over, I don't think, on February the 14th, which is the obvious date for the game. And the obvious venue is the Hull FC Stadium in Hull, the MKM Stadium as it's called, because that holds about 25,000, whereas Hull KR's home stadium only holds about 12, 12 and a half, 13, that sort of figure. So that stadium is free on that weekend because I think Hull City, the football tenants, are playing away that week. But it seems as though Brisbane will need a bit of cajoling to come over to England for a game on February the 14th. But I hope that they do reach agreement. And incidentally, we'll be able to find a bit more out about that on Friday, because this week, as you know, we're going to do a second podcast with the owner of Hull KR, Neil Hudgell, who's very kindly agreed to join us on Friday for a very special edition of this podcast. So that's going to be very interesting, and we'll be able to get it straight from him what the latest state of negotiations will be for that potential World Club Challenge game. But I certainly hope it goes ahead, and it would be sensational to have Brisbane playing in Hull, wouldn't it? Let's face it.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And I think the Broncos, they are keen to play the World Club Challenge. That was one of the first things
Well, they've
the
always
CEO.
supported it.
Yeah, and they came out pretty quickly after the grand final saying, yeah, they want that fixture to go ahead. Maybe having Madge as head coach, he knows how important that game is for English Rugby League as well. So hopefully,
very much so,
he can convince, the powers that be to fund the flights over and accommodation for a week or so. But
absolutely,
I think it'd be great because, the Broncos wouldn't necessarily have to partake in the preseason challenge. But imagine if they came over to England, played a game against Hull KR. They could also line up another trial game against, say, the London Broncos with Darren Lockyer's involvement there. And make it a bit of a trip, do a couple of games as their
That's a really great idea,
matches.
actually, Jake. If London Broncos are going to be in the Super League next year, which is a possibility, it would be terrific for the Broncos to appear in London, and I think that would really put London on the map, actually, in rugby league terms. And I'm sure that would help sell out the Cherry Red Records Stadium in Wimbledon. So what a great event that would be.
Mate, I'd have to think about coming over for that one, I think.
Oh, you certainly would. I'd insist on it, mate.
I'll see if the Broncos can maybe fly me in business class. I'll take economy if they.
Well, you ought
to
come with it. I mean, get on the phone to them and tell them how important you are, and get on the plane with them. And if you don't ask, you won't find out, will you? But no, it's going to be. I really hope it goes ahead because it's always such a big game when it happens. And by the way, the other thing we ought to give a mention to is the Pacific Cup, which starts this weekend with the game on Sunday in Auckland between New Zealand and Samoa, which is going to be a quite incredible event, isn't it, really?
Mate. Yeah.
I mean, Payne Haas playing for Samoa, my goodness.
It's set to be a cracker, mate. I think every single fixture in this tournament is going to be must-see TV.
Oh gosh, yes.
I believe Tonga are actually playing Samoa. I don't know what week it is, but that game's going to be at Suncorp, I'm pretty sure. I'm talking to a few of my mates about getting some tickets and going to that one because I think the atmosphere there between those two island nations is going to be electric. And
I was reading somewhere they've sold over 30,000 tickets already for that game, which would be terrific, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah, I'm not surprised. A lot of proud Samoans and Tongans live in Brisbane and in surrounding cities and towns. So we've got a big island Pacifica population in Australia, and every time those two face off, it's fireworks. So,
Yeah.
really looking forward to that, mate.
I noticed that Nelson Asafa Solomona, who's been released now by Melbourne, but he's actually on the bench for New Zealand against the Samoans this weekend. So, the thought of him against Payne Haas that's worth the admission money alone, isn't it? Let's face it. And
Yeah,
I think that's going to be a tremendous game because the Samoans have recruited so well, and the Kiwis playing in front of their own fans. What will be quite interesting for me is to see whether the New Zealand national team can draw a crowd as much as the New Zealand Warriors, which in recent years they've failed to do. And the New Zealand people seem to like the Warriors more than they like their national team, which is a great shame. It's not a shame that they like the Warriors, but it's a shame that they don't like the national team equally. And I do hope that they manage to draw a really big crowd to, I think it's called nowadays the Go Media Stadium, isn't it? In Auckland that they play at.
that's the thing too. It is hard with the rise of Samoa and Tonga. There's a lot of probably Warriors fans that live in New Zealand who are probably born to Tongan parents or Samoan parents and have probably grown up supporting those sides internationally. So, but yeah, mate, I think it'll be a great tournament, and I hope they get a capacity crowd this weekend to kick it all off. And then, hopefully we can back it up with the Ashes as well. But it's just great to see all these fixtures becoming a regular, fixture in the calendar year, because we need to focus on international rugby league. And
we do,
it's great to see a bit of certainty around this time of year.
Let's not forget the Pacific Bowl with PNG, Fiji, and Cook Islands, and the equivalent women's tournaments as well, which will also provide some great rugby. So it's great to see International Rugby League making a comeback really in recent years, and all we need now is to have a strong French team so that we can get some competition over here, and hopefully growing strength in the Welsh team as well. Hopefully that would be an incredible bonus as far as we're concerned.
Yeah, it would be great, mate. And it was over the weekend, I was sort of sitting around here at home waiting for footy to come on. There was nothing to watch. I was thinking to myself, God, these next few weeks can't come quick enough. But luckily we did have the old grand final to watch. But I don't know what to do with myself now that there's no rugby league on.
Absolutely. But still, we all need a bit of a rest from it at times, don't we?
Yeah, that's it, mate.
But not too much.
Have to spend a bit more time with our partners.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Great stuff. All right, mate. We might wrap it up, hey?
Let's just remind people again that we'll be out again on Friday with Neil Hudgell, the owner of Hull KR, who will talk about his time in the game, his role, as the owner of Hull KR, the ups and downs of that period, and he'll talk about rugby league more generally as well, I'm sure. So I think we're going to have a really fascinating conversation with Neil on Friday, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
Mate, that might be the perfect solution for those fans who are looking for some rugby league content to watch this weekend to tune into the League Express podcast, especially our Hull KR fans.
Dead right. Great stuff, mate.
All right, Martyn, we'll wrap it up here, mate. Good to see you again, and we'll chat
see you on Friday.
Hey?
Cheers.
See you, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Bye.